Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network. Hi, this is Amit Doshi, and I wanted to thank each and every one of our listeners. It's been 2 years since I founded IVM, and it's been an amazing 2 years. We wanted to learn a little bit more about who is listening to our shows, and so we put together a short survey. The survey is anonymous, and we aren't going to be collecting any personal information. I would really appreciate it if you could take a couple of minutes out of your day and go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and fill it out. Thanks, and please keep listening.
You're listening to the Paodcast, presented by the Daily Pao.
This is Pranati
and Purva,
and we're from the dailypao.com, a city-specific food and culture website, and this is our weekly podcast, the Paodcast. Now, for this episode, we are without our third partner, Amit Gurbaksani, who is on leave, so it's just the two of us, and we're going to be talking about 3 great restaurants that have opened in the city in the past 6 months. And this is an installment of Bombay Binge in which we talk about food in Bombay. So stay tuned for Bombay Binge.
Bombay Binge.
So in this episode, we're going to talk about 3 wonderful restaurants that have opened in recent months in the city. And the reason this is remarkable is that while Bombay, the culinary scene in Bombay is very active and restaurants keep opening and closing, but opening in prolifically in the city, very few of them are actually good. Most of them turn out to be pretty mediocre. Now,
I know
Purva,
this.
yeah, you review most of these restaurants, and I have to say most of your reviews are, they're about mediocre restaurants or restaurants that are like good but not remarkable.
Yeah.
So it's very heartening that 3 really good restaurants have actually opened in the past 6 months. So one is actually vegetarian.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're surprised by this, because India has great vegetarian
exactly.
food. But so this is called Tag, the Gourmet Kitchen, and it's in Lower Parel. Then there's the Blue, which is a Thai and Japanese place in Bandra, and the third one is the Clearing House.
The Clearing House, which opened before a lot before all of these. It's in
Ballad Estate.
It's in Ballad Estate, right?
Do you want to tell us first about Tag? Because I haven't eaten there, but you have, and you really loved it.
I did, and I can't wait to go back. I've only been once. Tag is actually, they do lunch and dinner, and they're housed within the Amateur Gallery, which is an art gallery for art students. And so Tag opened inside, and it's in Kamala Mills, so it's above PDT, which is the bar, and close to other restaurants. Now there's a Fatty Bao there and Dough, so there's a lot of food within Kamala Mills itself, and Tag is still like a great contender within that space. The kitchen is helmed by Ranveer Brar, who's a TV chef, and I wasn't very familiar with his TV shows or his book. He's authored one book, I think, so far, and I just thought, I'm generally quite, dismissive of TV chefs, because it's one thing to have a TV personality, but cooking is another thing altogether, right? Anyways, I was really pleasantly surprised, because what Tag does is it takes it puts a spin on every sort of dish. So even if you have like a watermelon salad, or whether you're doing a sushi or a pasta, he's used vegetables very intelligently, and it's not like they're unfamiliar vegetables or super exotic produce. There are like important ingredients in his dishes, but it's mostly the play on flavors and textures, and everything turns out fantastically. Like for example, I had this watermelon sashimi salad, and instead of just doing like watermelon and feta chunks, which is the norm everywhere else, with like little basil leaves, this guy, he basically takes there's like this sort of mound of like a yam guacamole, and on top of that they place like slices of sous vide watermelon. I've never really tasted cooked watermelon before, and I thought it would be slightly weird, like the texture wise, and it is kind of slimy, but it sort of drains out the excess water from the watermelon, and there's like this sort of umami glaze around it, I think I'm not exactly sure what's in that glaze. It's in the review. But it has this nice sort of an earthy, flavor.
Right.
And it works really well. And, just yam guacamole, that's also unexpected, right? Like, you wouldn't think beyond avocado or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting pairing. There's no cheese, absolutely. So you can do other things with watermelon. You can cook it, which I had no idea.
Right.
It tastes fantastic. Then he does things like, say, the mushroom galauti, which is fairly common on menus. But this one is so intensely meaty. And, you, like I said in my piece, that you really, even like a proper meat eater, if you put them in a blind test, you won't be able to tell this one apart from that. Yeah, it's excellent. There's also, they serve it with this sort of crisp buttermilk paratha, like a little shard of it. He does like a bean hummus with there's edamame, there's peas. It's really fresh tasting. It's lighter than hummus. There's he smears the bowl with, in a hummus, right? It's so sort of run of the mill, but he's put a spin on it, like a unique spin on it. It's tasty. It's something you want to replicate at home. Like everything he made up, and these are vegetables that are in our kitchen like practically every day, and you're like, hey, maybe I should try this. Like a bean hummus seems so simple.
Right.
And he just spikes the hummus with a little bit of wasabi, which gives it a fantastic kick. And they're all green elements, so that's interesting as well. And my favorite dish, I think, there was the multigrain maltagliati. Now this is, I
had to look it up too.
I had to look it up as well. It's a type of pasta, and like these sort of broad but like rectangular broad sheets of pasta that they hand cut and roll, and he uses nachni pasta, which is really interesting, and a multigrain pasta, and he sort of mixes it with kabocha squash, and the tastiest part of this whole dish is like there's this sort of creamy cloud of like parmesan over the dish.
Right.
And that's, I mean, cheese really elevates it. But again, the textures and the combination, it's unexpected. So yeah, it's not your typical pasta dish because it's not an arrabbiata, it's not an Alfredo, which every restaurant, like even the good ones offer, and he's dared to be different and it works. And the restaurant, at least I went on a weekday at lunch, it was packed. We didn't have a reservation, so we had to wait, even two of us. It's excellent, and I can't wait to go back. In fact, Ranveer Brar is also going to be he's opening multiple properties now, in the sense that he's heading up kitchens. Raspberry Rhinoceros, which is just reopened in Juhu. He's going to be handling all the food there, and
But that will have non-veg, right?
That'll be non-veg, and a lot of it will be Indian. So I'm really looking forward to his future projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting that Tag has opened at this particular time, because we're seeing a lot of experiments with Indian food. A lot of them, are, as we've talked about previously on the show, not particularly successful and highly derivative, all this modern Indian stuff, which is just, just bad fusion. But I mean, this is I suppose, a successful addition to the small number of interesting modern Indian restaurants that have opened in the city.
Yes, and it just feels like, such a sort of you could call it like a globally inspired menu, because not all dishes are like, they have a pasta, they have sushi, or the sushi, some of his less successful experiments on that menu. So even though it's like a globally inspired menu, it just stands out because he's really dared to try something different, and you won't find anything on that menu that's somewhere else right now. Or he has put such a, like, he's turned it around completely, so you're like, hey, this feels like a whole new dish.
Right.
Like the hummus, for example, like something as basic as a hummus or a salad.
Okay. Well, speaking of sushi, let's move on to the Blue, which is in Bandra, and it's a tiny place. It's a four-table establishment.
Literally, 4 to 6.
And so it has a Japanese menu and a Thai menu.
Yeah.
And it's run by a husband and wife duo. Both of them used to be chefs at the Four Seasons.
Yeah, so
right?
Sifa, who is, she's Thai, and she headed up she was the executive Thai chef at the Four Seasons, and they both worked at Sanchi, which offers like Japanese, Thai, and Indian food at the Four Seasons. And her partner Karan Bane, he was the Japanese chef there, one of the Japanese chefs employed at Sanchi.
But I have to say, I really like the Blue. I've been there 3 times already.
Yeah.
And the Japanese is kind of underwhelming, to be honest. It's okay, but the Thai is out of this world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally like eating Thai food in Thailand. That's the flavor that you get.
Yeah.
Like, my favorite dish on the menu is the steamed pomfret.
Yeah.
That they do, and it's in a broth, in a spicy, sweet and tart broth, and the sweetness and tartness comes from pineapple juice. That's the body.
Right.
And they put bird's eye chili, there's obviously lemongrass, and there's fish sauce.
Right.
And it's just an incredible dish.
Yeah, I remember you savoring it actually, and
yeah,
it was pretty spicy.
It was very spicy, and I have very low tolerance for spice, but it
Yeah.
was so good that I just polished it off.
Yeah.
And suffered the consequences the
Later.
following day.
Yeah.
But it was amazing.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, with Thai food, what's most essential is that balance of sweet, spicy, and tart. Sweet and spicy more often, and she gets that right each time. Like, they've gotten super busy over the past couple of months. They opened
Right.
2 months ago,
Yeah.
I think, and even with the sort of crush, the food is always on point, and
And it's pretty, what I like about it is that because the kitchen is right there, stuff is fresh. It's hot, and
Yeah.
it's steaming fresh.
and she actually comes, like, even though they're so busy, she actually speaks to the customers. I mean, she'll ask them what kind of flavors you want. She's trying to judge whether your palate is a little bit more evolved. Can it handle something like a steamed pomfret is something that's acquired. People will go for more typical things like your minced chicken in basil sauce, or your green curries, or the regular stuff. And even the regular stuff, for example, her somtam, I think, is one of the best in the city, and everybody does a somtam, right? And it's just this sort of explosion of flavor. I mean, for lack of a better word, it's just it's very sort of invigorating. And most sometimes salads just feel like you throw in like a bit of papaya and you douse it with lime or whatever. But somehow she gets that sweet, the bird's eye, and so you really sort of acknowledge all three on your palate.
And the other thing I really like over there, because I'm a sucker for noodles. I really like the pad thai.
Okay.
I mean, in your bog standard Thai place, the
Yeah.
pad thai will be this sloppy, oversauced gloop.
Yeah.
But here it's pretty light, and she makes it quite deftly. It just seems like it's been tossed briefly and then put into the bowl. So it's got this really nice, al dente texture to it.
Yeah, I also like her green curry. It feels like, I haven't checked this, but it feels like it's a paste that she is making in-house, or even if she's not, it just does not feel like that. Like curries are just generally overwhelmed with coconut milk, or any one element sort of sticks out. Hers is, again, very balanced, tastes very fresh. I think freshness is very key to why her cooking is so great.
So good.
I know you said you don't like the Japanese as much, but I actually go back a lot for their crispy avocado sushi. It's vegetarian, yes, but I like it. I like their sushi. It's simple, clean, works for that price point, and it's one of the best takeaway sushi I've had in in Bandra, in the city. I don't know, and it's just like, it's good to have an option for takeaway sushi.
Okay. Well, the third place and the final restaurant is the Clearing House, and this is in Ballad Estate on Calicut Street. And the location is interesting. It's housed in what used to be an ice factory. So if you see it from the outside, it's quite an attractive structure. You have this chimney, and it's this big roofed edifice. And inside, it's a really posh restaurant.
Yeah,
it's expensive,
looking restaurant,
and it's quite beautiful. But it's one of those occasion places, because it's pretty steep, the pricing.
Yeah.
And I do think for that pricing, the portions are a little small, but the food is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, so this was set up by, the founding team of Indigo, like the old hands at Digostibus before the company changed
Right.
management. And Rishad Nathani owns this place, and he has...
I mean, how would you describe the menu at Clearinghouse?
Well, I'll describe it the way they describe it, which is now everybody's favorite way of describing menus is globally inspired. And I had written multi-cuisine in one of my listings, and they wrote back to me saying, no, it's globally inspired. So let's stick with what they want to call it. Basically, it's one of those menus that can't be categorized. It's a lot like Ellipsis and Table in that sense, where you
Modern.
It is modern, and you'll get a lot of Asian elements in, or the influences from across the world, and that's a
Right.
fair sort of description for them. And it's largely driven by small plates, so that's the emphasis here. Not like tapas small, they're slightly bigger. I know you're complaining about the
No,
portions.
they're pretty small. They're pretty small. Maybe I have a big appetite.
Considering I ate mostly appetizers, I wasn't that displeased with the portions. But yeah, like a good selection again. I wouldn't say their entrees are very good. I mean, I had one, to be fair to them. But one of my favorite things here is their lamb tacos. They're really, really good. They serve... I'm guessing pulled lamb in a crisp taco shell, and they mix the lamb it's the spices are really nicely balanced, and they mix it with this sort of creamy slaw. And in fact, it prompted me to... I'm really keen to do a taco taste test, or a 10 best tacos, just to give this lamb, taco a little bit more sort of
Attention.
And another
An
thing...
excuse to go back and eat on company expense.
Maybe. But another thing I really liked there was they had these sort of baked asparagus canopies.
Right.
It feels like such an old school, one of those Conti on appetizers that you serve at parties.
It totally is.
And I just loved it. It had
At some Parsi auntie's home,
exactly.
it's that kind of...
you find this recipe in the Time. What is that?
Time and Talents
Talents Club. Yeah. So it felt like a dish straight out of that, and it had these crisp asparagus stalks that were sort of covered in cheese. Now, for me, anything baked and cheesy and crunchy generally is a winner. So I really like that as well. And they do a lot of salads, which is a great hit with the South Bombay ladies who lunch, who seem to be the ones.
Yeah, there are lots of South Bombay ladies who lunch.
Yeah.
It's full, and you can tell because they're all there with their blow-dried hair.
Okay, maybe we shouldn't.
Maybe we shouldn't diss them. They're
an
important constituency for restaurateurs. Yeah, but I really, one of the best things I ate over there was the shrimp dumplings.
Right.
So they had these shrimp dumplings in this fantastic coconut milk lemongrass broth.
Yeah.
They were simply amazing.
And just see, just from our selection of dishes, see the diversity on the menu, right? So it is multi-cuisine in a way.
It is.
But it's not your typical, there's an Indian section or,
Exactly.
or an American section or whatever. They've sort of blended, I would say. And I didn't... like I said, I only had one main dish over there, but what I did like, their desserts, there's this one dessert on the menu that really needs mentioning. It's the honey flan. I don't know if it's still there.
No, it is still there because I had it on your recommendation.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It has this honeycomb, it has figs, it has these edible flowers, but it's just one of the smoothest flans I've eaten. It's delicious, and it's whatever, gluten-free, vegan, one of those.
Not we care about that
desserts.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I think there are a lot of people who do gravitate towards those kind of choices on the menu now, and it's great. And I think what I really liked about the Clearinghouse, like you said, it's an occasion place. It looks like an occasion place, and they have this really sort of sexy, arresting bar inside called the Chamber, while the dining room is called the Foyer. And the dining room has these, arched windows and scalloped ceiling, and really tasteful looking place. And I think that, it's just nice to have a place that a nice looking place. Take a date to. Yeah. Okay. I haven't been on one in so long, but yeah, it's one of those nice posh spots.
Cool. So, So it feels really good to finally talk about restaurants that we really like, because we're always moaning about how shitty the new restaurants are in Bombay. So 3 places: Tag the Gourmet Kitchen in Kamala Mills in Lower Parel, The Blue in Bandra, and The Clearing House in Fort. Check them out, and you can read Purva's reviews of all 3 places on thedailypao.com. So that's it for this episode, and we'll see you next week. For more on what's happening in the city, read thedailypao.com. Also subscribe to our newsletter on the website. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're The Daily Pao. And you can find this podcast on the Indus Vox Media SoundCloud page, as well as iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn.
If you like listening to the podcast, check out Geek Fruit, hosted by Uber geeks Tejas Menon and Jishnu Guha. This show talks about geek culture from an Indian perspective: Star Wars, comic books, science fiction and fantasy, TV shows, and more.
Hey man, just help me out, man. I need some podcast, man. I haven't had a fix in a week. Just need some.
Don't you worry about it. I got podcast galore for you, man. Just go to ivmpodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna check it out.